I give the floor now to the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Eritrea, His Excellency Mr. Petros Solomon.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me first to congratulate you, Mr. President, for your election as the President of the 50th regular session of the General Assembly. My government is convinced that the wealth of your experience and abilities will prove vital at this crucial crossroads as we search for new and innovative mechanisms and structures to enhance the effectiveness of our organization to meet the challenges of the coming century. Allow me also to pay tribute to your predecessor, His Excellency Mr. Amra Essi, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Côte d'Ivoire, for the ability and commitment that he has shown in presiding over the 49th regular session of the General Assembly. We further wish to express our profound appreciation and commend the Secretary General, Dr. Petros Solomon, for his untiring efforts to ensure the effectiveness of our organization. Mr. President, the multifaceted challenges that our global community will continue to face in the period ahead and the opportunities that exist more than any other time in the past to promote equity and justice in a more harmonious world will require a thorough review of the paradigms, methods, and institutions that may have proved to be largely functional for the past 50 years. Indeed, the realities that inspired the founding of the UN in 1945 and shaped its operational mechanisms in the subsequent decades are much more different, if not altogether new, to those prevailing at this juncture. The membership of the organization itself has undergone phenomenal change to increase by almost fourfold. Moreover, while the threat of a major international confrontation has receded with the end of the Cold War, a host of other problems, including an upsurge in interstate conflicts, international terrorism, growing poverty, and marginalization of vast segments of humanity in the developing countries, as well as within affluent societies, are emerging to the foreground. It is apparent that these problems and realities will require novel theoretical and institutional approaches. It is in this context that my government welcomes the debates that have been provoked by the recommendations of the Independent Working Committee and other interested parties on the future of the UN. Let me further underline that as one of the new member countries of the UN, we are gratified to rejoin the world community of states and impart our views on its future, especially as we have had the added advantage of gauging its operations from without for most of the past 50 years. We share the view with many member states on the imperative of restructuring the decision-making bodies of the United Nations, particularly the Security Council, in a manner that ensures adequate representation of its diverse components and interests. The process of restructuring should not, moreover, consist of mere enlargement through the inclusion of a number of potential candidates as permanent members through some selection criteria of financial and economic clout, population size, and other similar factors. As we all agree, the issue is more profound and transcends a simple numbers game. In the event, we hold that serious thought must be put in devising a suitable arrangement that guarantees the proper representation of our global community in its rich diversity and that is amenable to periodic adjustments to accommodate inevitable changes in a dynamic world. In the same vein, we welcome the emerging consensus for rationalizing the development agencies and institutions of the United Nations by eliminating overlapping functions and mandates and integrating them into more powerful and authoritative bodies. The numerous platitudes that have been universally adopted in the international summits in Rio, Cairo, Copenhagen, and Beijing aimed at environmental preservation, the reduction and elimination of poverty, and the empowerment of women cannot be realized without concerted efforts of these enhanced institutions. The new drive towards their increased integration is therefore both appropriate and timely. Mr. President, all these ideas cannot come to fruition without the essential prerequisite of peace. As a nation and people that have suffered the agonies of war and conflict for almost the entire lifetime of this organization, my government cannot underrate the efforts and priorities that the United Nations must accord to the prevention and resolution of conflicts. Past failures and inadequacies can only reinforce the collective resolve of our global community to check forces of aggression and destabilization and not to let down wronged parties. And yet, we cannot hide our disappointment at the indecision and the wavering we see in sending clear signals to defuse potential time bombs and brewing conflicts. The age-old folly of arming belligerent and aggressor states in pursuit of narrow commercial and other mundane interests continues unabated. This anomalous leftover of the Cold War years must surely be rectified, as it is the first step that we must take in our quest for global peace and as we devise elaborate mechanisms for conflict prevention, management, and resolution. Mr. President, if I have dwelt somewhat at length on what we aspire to see in the invigorated organization in the decades to come, this is due to my sincere belief that the tone we set here collectively will have far greater influence in shaping the future of our planet than the isolated measures and endeavors we undertake in our individual countries. Allow me now, Mr. President, to briefly touch on issues of direct importance to my country and our sub-region. After 3 decades of agonizing war, my government is today fully engaged in healing the wounds of war, rehabilitating a devastated country, and institutionalizing the rule of law. The constitution drafting process that is hinged on popular participation at all its phases is progressing at a satisfactory pace and according to the envisaged schedule. We are also doing our utmost to contribute together with our sisterly partners towards the creation of a climate conducive to sub-regional cooperation and collective security in our part of the continent, which has seen much turmoil and commotion in the past. The precarious situation in Somalia and the problems posed by the destabilizing policies pursued by the National Islamic Front regime in the Sudan only indicate the enormity of the tasks that need persistent and concerted efforts by all concerned regional and international actors. The recent document signed in regard to the implementation of the second phase of the peace agreement between the Palestinian and Israeli parties can only inspire confidence in all of us that this long drawn-out conflict is heading towards a satisfactory solution at long last. We trust that these measures will contribute towards a comprehensive settlement of the conflict in the Middle East. Mr. President, In conclusion, I wish to restate our firm belief and hopes that our organization will find the insight and inner strength to reinvigorate itself to meet the challenges of the next century. I can only reiterate my government's firm commitment to play its small and modest share to advance the ideals that bind us together. Mr. President, I thank you.